We are coming back to you with another video full of Neblime and the Shambler. It's going to be a ZVZ once again, as Neblime has been maining Zerg for a while. He did say he wanted to switch back to Terran or try Protoss, or something to that effect anyway, and just to see what else the game has in store for him, since he has been practicing Zerg so much. Now this is, of course, Boskevine. This is Shambler's home territory, and it is his home race, if you want to consider Zerg his main. So at the same time, we are also seeing a total mineral lockout. He's only now grabbing some gas, so I wonder what Neblime is going to do, right? Because obviously, on the other hand, this looks like a Hydrock opener from Shambler, who's just going to continue getting some Droleths out in the meanwhile, scouting at 9, which is a little bit before, or a little bit after, rather, the scout coming out from Neblime. And take a page out of none other than Artosis' book while we're waiting for the game to start, as he sometimes says, while we're waiting for the action to get started. Thanks for watching the video, bro. And by thanks, I mean I'm making the fucking video. The least you could do is say thanks for the video in the comments below. Oh shit, he reversed it. He reversed the parasocial relationship. He's holding you accountable as a viewer. What will this man think of next? It is going to be a Hydrock followed by a Larvosk, fairly standard stuff. And Neblime, on the other hand, is doing some weird, very delayed Zorkis. I don't know if this is supposed to be like an economic build, but this seems like a real big misstep. He might have been autopiloting or something. So there you go. His Zorkis is very late, and I think Shambler is going to spot this and say, wait, you just put this down, bro. What is going on here? So if that happens, you know, Shambler could obviously throw a third guy on the gas and instantaneously start pumping Skither cores to go across the map super fast. Meanwhile, it looks like a Droleth was slightly sassed and maybe even harassed. I'm just trying to finish the rhymes, you know. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So. Surely, Neblime will not be allowed to come back from this. I mean, I actually don't know what he's going to be doing with that, but I guess we'll find out. I mean, the Larvosk is here, so it's a little bit late, right? There's still no combat units being made. Shambler is just content to apparently take the tempo advantage. I imagine the next larva will be a Gorgorcore. There it is. Meanwhile, over here we just have... Yeah, okay, it's just going to be workers. So he made the Hydrock, but then he went straight for workers instead and is going to go grab a Spraith. I mean, he's actually behind in workers compared to Neblime, so I feel like he took the only option that could be done to do, like, ineffective things, you know what I mean? To, like, not capitalize upon the... you know, appointment there, that the opening, the opportunity. Hey, I'm certainly not the one to call the shots here, so we'll see what he ends up doing. Zor used to left on the way as well to just sort of walk in and scout, maybe tickle the Spraith a little bit. And what are you going to do? Attack it with Droleths and thus cause it to spawn Rillarokors? By then, we should be seeing some Hydras. Indeed, we already see 2 in production, as well as 2 more workers. So Shambler has caught up in worker count as a result, but there will, of course, be an expansion much faster. And I guess, admittedly, one of his workers here, Neblime, was burrowed over in that location, so it's not as bad as maybe it was initially laid out to be. I'm really surprised that Shambler didn't go for something more aggressive. Maybe he didn't bother... I mean, you must click the structure to see what it is. So I was going to say maybe he didn't bother clicking it and, like, lodging in his own head that, oh, yeah, it's really low on HP, and therefore it's really low on, you know... What would you say? Durability? It just now was put down, that sort of thing. So this thing's just going to be kind of annoying. Not really going to be too useful. Oh no. Flee! Okay. It's really funny to me, by the way, that by default the Rillarokor, the Broodling, right? Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh, he's out of position. Don't lose a worker to a fucking Zorius. Absolutely silly. This is pretty funny. This is like Neblime really taking the piss. So he has a K-Grin of his own turning into a Spraith. He does have a double Lakizalisk to burrow here. But the thing about the Rillarokors that's funny to me is that by default they have no death animation. They just become the corpse with no transition. So speaking of no transition, this is a second Larvosk. This is a 1-base build to get as much larva as possible now that he's reached some point of saturation from his main. And he's going to attempt to pressure. But he needs to bring an Ovaleth if he wants to crack the code. Or he needs a lot of Iziracors maybe. He does have 1 in production just finished. And now the Gorgakor spots the second Larvosk, as well as the Hydra count, or at least a little bit of it. And either way, at this point, Shambler is in a spot where I'm not sure what he's planning on with this. If this is a third Larvosk, then he's like super all in, basically. He does not want to try to transition out of this. Because he's not going to have enough money in reserve. It's going to be a circuit. When you have this much larva and you're actually producing off of them all, particularly when you're producing stuff that isn't just workers, since those are a little bit cheaper, you have to realize, oh shit, I don't have a transition point. Like, I don't have enough money to drop an expansion, right? So instead it's going to be, we see Hydras, we're going to see more Hydras, presumably, so that isn't really too surprising. And, yeah, otherwise just standard shit, pretty much. Now, these are not rallied. There's an Ovoleth here. Okay, perfect. These are not rallied to a good location, but if he puts the Ovoleth here, he can just attack the Lekizolisks with impunity. It's a question of whether or not he's going to do that, of course. At the same time, with the Ovoleth here, will he spot this Droleth? Probably not. It's not going to make a massive difference either way, but I guess the longer that it goes on, the more Neblime knows this is an all-in sort of one-base tactic. Now, back at home, he's getting a second Circuith. He has the Zorius and the Gorg. He has the two Lekizolisks. He doesn't really have that much else. He went for a Hydrock, and he's starting to add some other units. He will have a third Lekizolisk, but if they come in from the right-hand side, this Circuith in the back is pretty much useless, and this Lekizolisk is going to need to be unburrowed for it to be able to do anything. So that's another crucial detail. Now, this Droleth was forced off by a Hatterosk, so it does look like Shambler wants to be able to transition into a macro play if this one doesn't work out, which means he's going to need to keep his units alive if his attack does not complete the whole circle here. Another thing that's kind of interesting is we haven't really seen anybody try to use like stacking the Lekizolisks on top of each other to avoid being able to tell how many there are. But in this particular case, it's not going to be of too much consequence. There's the Ovoleth to spot out the Lekizolisk. Of course, it doesn't die to the one Spraith, and it does need to be moved back up. The Zorius has already fallen. Only one Hydra has been lost for Shambler. And now the Circuith is dangerously close as well. So there we go. Another Lekizolisk is going to be falling here. But again, a lot of these Hydras are starting to get weak, so they are going to need to burrow to regain HP if that's something that Shambler wants to do. And again, he's got so many idle military units that could be coming down this way if they had been rallied. You have to think that maybe that would have made the difference there, or been able to make the difference. Maybe that would have persuaded Shambler to stick around. He's got the Ovoleth. Admittedly, it hasn't been controlled super well. Like, he could have just moved it over here or something. We get the this is still the rough weapon range preview, and you don't get a chance to look at this about your enemy's units. But we can see here that he probably could have stationed it over here or something and just hold position, and then you'd reveal the Lekizolisks. So now he's given Neblime a little bit of an opportunity here, and all he really got for his troubles was killing a couple of Hydras, a couple of Lekizolisks, not even killing the Kagran to force it to be remorphed to spend another Droleth on that. So instead, Neblime just adds one more structure and calls it a day. Now, at the same time, our worker counts are slightly Shambler favored. Again, this is a little bit more because there's one worker up here doing nothing. But generally speaking, this map state is actually surprisingly going to be a little bit Shambler favored. Neblime has a little bit more on the gas bank, but no tier 2 on the way just yet, of course. Would be a little bit too early for that, given the 2-base play that we've seen. So, as a result, we are probably going to wait a little bit before this game progresses any further. And it doesn't look like this ridge is going to be harvested from Shambler, so at least not for a little bit, which does obviously mean that it gives Neblime the opportunity to bank that gas a little bit faster. But of course, if there's more pressure put on and more units are forced to be trained, that's going to deplete the gas pretty substantially here. We have more Iziricors being trained to save on the gas, of course, which does make sense. But after a certain point, you're going to need to do something else. And in fact, there was no other Lekizolisk, right? He made 2 extra Lekizolisks on top of the 2 that he had. And here comes the Ovoleth to obviously reveal the Lekizolisks here. And yeah, both of them are popped now. So we should definitely see some other change come out from Neblime. But at this point, I mean, he underwent on the military count and didn't build additional Lekizolisks and didn't try to safeguard his Lekizolisks from the Ovoleth by sicking some sort of anti-air on them, right? Now, a lot of the Hydras were split, so they weren't really picking the right targets here. But yeah, you can see at this point, it's probably not going to matter too much. Back at home, there are some more units that are training and idle. And yeah, these Kagrans are not going to complete the remutation, besides this one, which seems to have gone unnoticed. But again, there weren't any other units that came up with it, right? If maybe these Droleths had used that opportunity to come straight back up, that would have been something. But at this point, the Iziricor has fallen. Some of these Droleths will get some kills. But generally speaking, this is a very expensive loss. You can see the worker count stretching in favor. It looks like Shambler is about ready to get us back into the series where, if we're following from the previous castover, Neblime took it 3-0, which was quite surprising. And now over here on Boskevine, home field advantage. Neblime may end up being he's certainly disadvantaged at this stage with the Hydras behind his mineral line. The one saving grace is that all of these Hydras, 17 of them, have not been rallied down, and there's a lot of money in the bank here. And there is a single Lechizilisk that's going to go ahead and burrow and attack, but it's still not going to be too much here. You know, the Spraith can be picked off there and forced to remutate, depending on what ends up happening. He does want to move back a little bit more. He's going to finish the job onto that Kagran. There is still a Spraith over here, which can potentially do something. But, you know, again, I'm thinking about, like, the Ovileth revealing them, obviously. That could be a pretty big deal. He wants to go in for that Izira core, but just 5 Hydras, it's not going to be enough to pop those Lechizilisks. And he now realizes, okay, I've got 25 Hydras. Surely I should have rallied these over to my front line. Here's an Ovileth, but there's nothing in it. He's going to peel off some of the Hydras over here to try to attack it. Maybe they'll be able to pick it off before it escapes, but I kind of doubt it. And yeah, you can see there it's... I mean, he can just take these units over here. Yeah, it's going to fly into the rest of the flock. So there you go. That kind of confirms the demise that is about to happen for poor old Neblime. He's getting a Circuith, but he destroyed his Spraith to be able to do that, to be able to remorph, which obviously at this point means that's pretty rough, honestly. That means that he's got nothing to stop the Ovileths from revealing. You know, you might have wanted to have, like, triple Spraith just for that purpose alone, right? But instead, you know, it's just going to be pure Hydra all the way. You know, I was looking around to see if there's a tier 2. It's not here, and it doesn't really matter anyway. The Lechizilisks are going to get popped before they can really reach any sort of critical mass. Some nice spines towards the end, but GG is called, and Shambler takes game number 1. As soon as he wants to, you know, end the game. There you go, Shambler. There you go. So we'll take a quick look through the score screen here. You can definitely tell that Neblime was under the unit production count, right? And that's probably the main thing that mattered here. Whereas, obviously, on the resources side, he was pretty even, you know, and that's because he had the earlier expansion. But as soon as you start getting down to the point where you lose a bunch of workers and, you know, he didn't pull the workers at, like, the right time when there were still a lot of Lechizilisks up. Maybe he could have, like, occupied the auto-attack priority of the Hydras or, you know, made them sort of like some of the ones in the back stutter step forward or something like that. And that could have maybe helped him out. But realistically, it was the choice that after that first attack was rebuffed and before he had the worry that, you know, he even had to pull his workers to begin with, he decided to bank on building more army and instead just tried to get that money so that he could get to a fast tier 2. And his gambit was called. So we'll see what happens in game number 2 here. Well, really, it's game number 5, but you know what I mean. Game 2 of this cast over. All right, boys. Neblime is now the red, and Shambler is now the off yellow. What is this color? Goldenrod. Love that. So we do have Neblime and the Shambler. Cross spawns, cross colors. They've basically just taken up their old adages. If you guys are wondering, sometimes you will see similar colors in 1v1s. It's because we end up optimizing for contrast now. So you will see like red and yellow or red and blue and stuff like that. Fairly decent amounts. So different shades of those. And there's also some other colors like different greens and whatnot. So who knows what'll end up happening. That's obviously for the random colors. That's not for, you know, like in the Terran tutorial, you're going to see a green and a green. Big surprise. But, you know, that's because it's the same faction, right? So that's why that makes sense. At least IMO. So Shambler once again scouting on the 9th worker here, and Neblime going to not do that. He might be a little bit more on the ball with his timing for the Zorkis. I'm curious, he does watch these videos. Maybe he can tell me what he was thinking in the first game about delaying the Zorkis. Because actually he did have a worker advantage for a little bit, but he didn't really do too much with it beyond that, right? It will be a Hydrock first for Monsieur Shambler, who obviously is enjoying having that level of expertise and power. And we obviously see only 2 guys on gas this time around. That means that Neblime is slow going to get his 100 gas for the Zorkis, which could mean that he's going expansion first, which would be really ballsy versus the Shambler. We know that he likes to go for his cheeky moves there. So we'll see what he wants to do. It does look like that's going to be it. He's banked enough gas, or enough minerals. He also banked enough gas for the Zorkis, though. So this is a little bit awkward of a build, right? Because it's like, oh, man, you know, now I need to wait 50 gas and cut workers for my Zorkis, which is obviously going to set him behind a little bit. So he sees the Hydrock. He will guess that that's going to be a Larvos because that seems like what it's going to be. And there is indeed also a Zorkis on the way. Shambler will confirm it's a Hatch first. Hatcherosk first is not something we see too often. Boskevine isn't really a big map as far as rush distance goes by land. So yeah, Shambler's just going to say greedy and then presumably just rally his first Hydra over there. So this game could end very quickly, guys. This could be a very fast one. But at the same time, the Zork is, you know, almost done. And we'll see what happens there, right? Zero-Core does indeed move faster than the Hydra. I'm not sure how much it is by, but, you know, you. Well, he takes a moment to comprehend that and keeps an idle worker just in case. His Orcas is complete, but a Hydra is already on the way, as well as the second one. What is his first unit? It's a Gorgocore. Okay, well, Neblime does almost have enough money for a Lakizalisk, and he doesn't have full saturation on this Geyser. You do want 3 on the Geyser, by the way. Particularly on Boskevine, the Geyser's a little bit further away. And he is going to go for a Circuit, it looks like. He hasn't saturated this yet, and that's fine, because he still needs saturation back at home anyway. There's the Lakizalisk that I was expecting. The second Hydra is going to come up. And that Kagrin is now going to be a wasted, you know, effort, right? Something that we will have to pray for. I mean, there's a bunch of idle workers back here, so, you know, it's... Shambler is atrophying a little bit, right? Waiting for the third. There it comes. Gorgocore will, of course, struggle to deal with all of these. And off it goes. It's popped. But the Lakizalisk is here. Maybe that can zone him out. Yeah, you could tell that Neblime wasn't really expecting this. He could have had his hatch down a lot sooner if he hadn't been harvesting gas the whole time. But I think you would have then needed to stick to only minerals, or maybe go for a Hydrock behind it or something. Trying to think of it, like, you could definitely hold this with, you know, Quasath, right? I do like the moves with the Droleths to stop them from standing on top of the Lakizalisk, because now it's just not possible to really do anything about this, right? Barely manages to escape, very wounded. And this Circuit is really in an awkward position. That's not going to help him at all, so... I almost prefer to turn this into a Larvosk at that point, because you don't have one back in your main. It's like, well, this isn't a useless spot. But there's a lot more Hydras on the way. Does he have enough Lakizalisks in production? The answer is no, because he only has 2, and none in production, actually. So he could go for, like, more Circuits. Maybe, ironically, if he's trying to hold, like, for a charge into the main, this, you know, another Circuit here and maybe a Lakizalisk there could be useful, but... I just feel like his surface area is a little bit too large. And he doesn't have any other military units coming. He's got an Ovalith. I don't know what that's for. What's he planning on doing with the Ovalith? We'll find out. But I think, yeah, this is a rough game for Neblime. He does have a well, he has a Skithercore in his main. He doesn't have a Spraith, so he'll instantly start one, but he's going to lose a couple of workers in the meantime. If he had kept his Gorg alive, then he would have been okay. In fact, I think the Kagrin might... Yeah, he's just going to have to mutate another one. I was going to say, that's pretty rough, too. The Burrow will be temporarily useful. Yeah, GG's called. He doesn't have anything. Okay, well, Shambler showing why you don't want to go hatch first versus him. I feel like that game was almost on the free side, so we'll see if Game 3 of this castover is any better. All right, let's settle in for our final match. We do have the Snow Shambler against the Brown Neblime. And they are back in the spawns that they originally had in the first match. I do want to say, if you were going to go for a mineral-focused opener and go hatch first, if you go with a Quasrock after that, surely that's going to be okay, because you can at the very least have, you know, Zeth Vorv or even Nath or something. I think that would work out better, because Zorkiz takes 5 seconds longer than the other tech, or maybe 10 seconds longer than the other tech nodes, I think. So it's a pretty big handicap if you're going to go that way. But it looks like Neblime is just going to go back to his usual antics of late tasking one worker onto gas. We'll see what he wants to do after that. Yeah, there's the second one onto gas. So he's got his own sort of style figured out, it seems. But it definitely leaves a lot of floating minerals, and I don't know if that means that he's got... Like, it felt like he was just sort of like, oh, let me just see if it works, man. You know, this is radical, bro. Shambler's a little bit more tight with the timings, as we've said before. I say this despite him idling workers for a while. But, you know, in this case, he's actually waiting for the gas. He could definitely have, like, returned 1 or 2 mineral returns or something with that. But is that super significant? Maybe not, you know. I still think it's, like, that's the level of shit that you optimize for if you're, like, a pro-level player or something, right? So it's going to be a Larvosk first. We saw Mist do this in a 2v2, and it did not backfire on him, but it also didn't really seem to make a huge difference, which I thought was kind of neat. And now we're going to see a Scout Worker be leaving the building with a third... Yeah, in this map, you do want 3 on gas before any on the ridge, by the way. That's something that you have to remember. Or maybe it's not... I don't know if it's actually that significant. I think it is, though. So the Larvosk is indeed going to be done. And there is the Hydrock. So it's not going to be Zorkiz. Neblime may be feeling a little bit of the pressure. We had a interruption of sirens because they were coming to arrest Neblime. Or maybe the Shambler. We'll see. Whoever loses here gets arrested. I think that's the new stakes. You're under arrest for fucking being bad at this game. That's what they'll say in that exact tone of voice and trailing off at the same amount of time and everything. And in the meantime, while I was waiting for them to go away, I made myself a drink. So here's the sponsored sip. Of course, sponsored by none other than Pornogo and Veek7's coffee page, which linked you can find in the bottom right. Will be a Skiff and then a Hydra, so that's kind of interesting. Obviously, he scouted that it's going to be a Hydrock Den first for Neblime. We'll see if this is going to be the change that he needs to find success in this particular castover. I almost wish, actually, based on that I had, like... If I played these, or I casted these in the order that they were played, right? Did Shambler notice that? I mean, that's a really easy thing to fix, or to track down if he noticed it. Didn't notice, I don't think the Skiff crossed his path. Yeah, he doesn't have anything else being made, but he has a lot of Hydras in production, so that's going to be enough to give him a little bit of a security against this. And again, I want to see people who use Skither cores, actually hold their nerve. If he had just stuck onto a single worker, he could have gotten that kill, almost certainly. That's what it feels like to me, anyway. Meanwhile, the worker advantage that Shambler could, or the worker parity that Shambler could have is not, because there's 2 idle workers. Classic move. And I say that because, of course, one of them is burrowed over here for Neblime, so... Just going to go ahead and go for that expansion with a couple Hydras guarding it. Guarding the front gates, maybe. Skiff back onto this area. Not interested in using it to patrol for hostile Skiffs. It's kind of interesting. It does feel like, to me, that... Oh, well, he might have shown his hand there. Let's see if Neblime updates his minimap. No, he didn't bother looking, so I'm not sure if he noticed that on the minimap. He definitely would have had vision of it, though, so... Yeah, he saw that. He saw the worker. His camera position was on the worker, so he knows that there's an expansion attempt. That might fool him into thinking, oh, I should move out. Yeah, you can tell he's already planning on moving out here. He's going to meet the Hydras at the right time. Here comes the Skiff. Couple of split damage because they were on auto attack. And in fact, we're even going to be able to see at least one more Hydra picked off if Shambler's focus is good. Well, he picks off one that was full HP. He loses his Skiff for it, which isn't really the end of the world. Where did the... I think there was a wounded one somewhere. I don't know where it went. Maybe it already died. One for Neblime, that is. And yeah, at this point, we're looking at a pretty awkward position here. He's just sort of seeding and atrophying a lot of Hydras as he goes back home to make more units. Azira cores, etc. Now, these ones are a little bit harder for the Hydras to actually deal with because, I mean, you have to try to spread them around, right? So, all in all, not great focus, you can tell, because... Oh, wait. I think I just saw the Hydra somewhere, didn't I? Oh, no, I was selecting Shambler's Hydra. I thought for a second I saw the wounded one. Well, there's 6 Hydras back at home and a couple of Azira cores on the way. Yeah, 4 of them on the way for Shambler. And he didn't do any eco damage, so Neblime is up ahead by 1 worker still. And that's kind of interesting because it means that, like, oh, there's opportunity here for Neblime to stay in the game, right? Worker transfer occurring, and Neblime actually ahead by 3 workers now. Again, still getting valuable intel over this, where it's like in the right position for the Droleths to not reveal it, and also in the right position for these units to not see it. It wasn't intentional because it just burrowed when it was being attacked, but it's still actually a really, really solid spot. So that's kind of interesting. Works out, right? Now, if we think about where Neblime can go from here, I like Neblime's awareness of certain mechanics. Like, he borrowed his Azira cores, even though there was no danger, because he knows that they regenerate faster that way. I don't see other Zerg players doing that as much. Now, this army from the Shambler is a little bit spooky. Even though Neblime's army got here sooner, the Azira cores are sort of wounding each other a lot during this whole equation, right? And there's way more Hydras back behind them, so the focus here wasn't super good for Neblime either. So yeah, that's going to be a spot where now he can maybe think about, pushing in, maybe, picking off this Circuit. There are more units being produced, but it might be a little bit before they hatch, right, as far as combat units are concerned. But Shambler's going to hesitate here just to set up his own stuff. It looks like a Droleth, there was worker-on-worker violence, the idle one from Neblime's area there, actually hitting pretty hard. So the Circuit is actually going to be partially focused here, but mostly it's going to be the Azira core And then it looks like we're going to focus down that circuit now and then change our approaches. Yeah, just going to continue the work. I am glad to see the work. Yeah, now we see the worker pull a little bit faster, so this is not going to be as effective. He's, in fact, just going to try to do his best to escape. I don't know if... Yeah, okay, it looks like he escapes with those 3 Hydras just fine. He has tried to zone this Ovilith out because, again, it could be a transport, but there's nothing in it. So there is no drop as a result. That might have sent Shambler for a bit of a panic. He could go for an expansion off of the back of this. He lost some mining time, neblime, but no, again, not really anything consequential. Didn't even have to rebuild the circuit, like the Kagrant part of the circuit, right? It's really cool to see that regression case happen. So I like that a lot. I do feel like, you know, we've been having some discussions about, you know, how to improve Zerg or what to change about Zerg. Like, is there going to be something that needs to be done? But it does feel like, you know, the things that we have done for Zerg and CMBW are pretty cool. Like, they feel more like Zerg to me. So if you guys agree or disagree, I'd be happy to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And we get to see that because these are all ZVZs. And they're not, besides that second game where it was sort of like a botched build order from neblime, and I'm sure he can comment on that a little bit too, it seems like ZVZ is pretty solid overall. Now, again, Shambler does have a bit of a worker deficit here, particularly since a lot of them are idle, and he is going to go ahead and try to take the one in the middle, but that might give him the advantage, right? He'll have the base in the middle. He has the Larvosk. No, never mind. The Larvosk is parity. Okay, there's production parity between our players, but this Hacharosk in the middle, that's going to give him a pretty big, you know, advantage as he starts to saturate the ridge as well. I feel like he could go for a base in the top left, too. Meanwhile, there is going to be a drop here. 2 Iziricors on a Hydra. That could be really, really dangerous for the... for Shambler's workers, particularly since I don't think he has any military units lying around. 1 Iziricor just hatched, but a lot of his other units... Okay, it's a very long-distance elevator, and it will be spotted here. So what does Shambler do? Does he even have the opportunity to respond? I'm not sure that he even knows. Okay, he figures it out now, right? There is an elevator. He's going to evacuate his workers. He doesn't have anything producing at these bases until just now. And again, you know, as he's adding more defenses and such, he doesn't really have any anti-drop. It feels like he could charge in over here, but there's not an equivalent army, but close enough, and obviously the double circuit. So he's wisely not picking the spot there to deal with that. At the same time, this Hydrock Den is being killed. And it's just gone, yeah. So he's going to have to rebuild that. That's not as bad as it might seem. He's already started to rebuild it at his natural, sort of recognizing that, yeah, there was no shot for me to secure that. And obviously now he can start to pull his workers back, but he's a little bit slow on that too, only now getting it, right? So yeah, there's going to be, what, 17 workers on this base, a couple more are on the way, and what is he going to do as a result? I would put like a macro hatch over here or something, and maybe some anti-air defenses, anti-surface defenses for anti-drop in general. But Shambler is now going to try to move out. He's heading towards the middle of the map, and it looks like, yeah, he's just doing it again. neblime knows. He's like, well, let me try it again and see what happens. And yeah, there's no units here for defense, right? He can't produce any more military units at all until now. So what does Shambler do? He instantly queues up. No, these are old workers. What does he do? Is he even going to suspect this? Yeah, they're back here, boys. It's 3 Iziricors. They've got 2 armor. Good luck killing these with Drolets, bro. So this is where Shambler, I think he was a little bit too fast assuming that he's going to be able to do everything that he needs, right? It's pretty wild, actually. So little bit awkward. Does he have units? He has some Hydras in production. Okay. And he's going to go ahead and get access to this right-hand side. But look at all of the Hydras and other stuff that has been done over here. There's so many units that neblime can use as soon as he pulls the other Iziricor stack off of the ramp here. He might not even need it, actually. The spread of control, there's a bunch of Hydras behind the, you know, around the mineral line and such. More of them wrapping all around. And now here come the Iziricors to absorb a lot of that damage. There goes all the focus. These Iziricors still tickling, getting caught around a little bit. And still no harvesting happening in the main. He does have this base, but it's not going to be as rich in terms of minerals. So he can theoretically go for a tier 2 push at some point, but look at all the units that are coming. That, I feel like, would be kind of like a death knell or something. You know, that would be a real difficult spot here. Shambler's going to go ahead and pick off this 1 Iziricor, but he only has 1 circuit over here, and there's about to be a whole boatload of... What is it? A whole can of whoop-ass just got unloaded on us, or whatever the fuck. Whatever Metzen said a long time ago. So there's more Hydras here, but yeah, I think interrupting the cycle of production by sniping the Hydrock Den, and then the follow-up drop that like interrupted his ability to, you know, build. I mean, just the fact that he went and lost his army before being able to actually replenish it was really the big thing. He's losing his 3rd It's just going to be totally forfeit now. Now, at the same time, neblime only now got his tier 2 started, and a third base is about halfway complete. Shambler can go for a tier 2. It's just he also needs to be able to survive versus this fairly sizable army of 9 of each combat unit, right? So it's not going to be easy. I mean, he does have a lot of Hydras, but some of them are like off to the side. Some of them are like relocating in weird ways. This circuit has absorbed so much pressure and damage, so a lot of the Hydras are already dead. So it looks like he will actually be able to survive. And that is probably going to be much to his happiness here as he tries to maintain his perfect record on Boskevine. So what does this mean, right? I mean, he's getting his Iral Iris. It is going to be late. Obviously, neblime is up a base. For how long? What does Shambler want to do now with what he's got? Shambler could still come back from this, but it would require neblime to make a mistake, and it would require Shambler to play pretty damn well. So I'm not sure. Not that he can't do that, but it's just that's going to be really difficult for him. He's going to go ahead and confirm that there's nothing over here stopping him from expanding. There's Iziricors and Hydras massing up on this side. There are some Hydras over here, right? So what's the response going to be? He does have these on a control group or something, so he moves them back. Here come all the Hydras. The Drolets could join the fight too, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Oh, never mind. They will. There you go. Yeah, why not? Here comes the sandwich. Just doing some damage here. Not really any kills just yet. But just a single, by the way, of Hydras is all that remains right now. And where are the Bactylisks? That's what I'm expecting here, because the Gorgor Swamp is only now done. So it just now started for Shambler. You can tell that neblime maybe could have had that up a little bit sooner, and the third base is now going down, but it's pretty damn late. And in fact, he doesn't even have the money just yet to put it down. Now he does, but will he actually do it is the question. Yeah, there you go. He's going to go ahead and queue it up. But Bactylisks are nearly complete, and the Gorgoril is only halfway done now. And some Kagra bugs. Love those. He's got the Iziricors for reducing the damage, but I think he needed a lot more Hydras to maybe try to position himself. The Iziricors for neblime are also in a really good spot for that too, so that helps. So he's going to go ahead and try to sick him. I mean, he does have a lot of Iziricors himself, Shambler. I don't think this number of Bactylisks is actually going to be enough to end the game. So, surprisingly enough, he's doing okay, but now the Iziricors are pretty much dead. So the Hydras, which only have 1 armor by comparison, are going to be a little bit more vulnerable to something like that. Especially with the reinforcement Hydras, that might be enough to break the chain here. Considering, obviously, these Bactyls are regressing, right? Does he have any more units in production? He only has the 1 Hydra, the 2 Hydras that are idle. He's got a bunch of Hydras on the way, it looks like. But is that going to be enough, right? More Iziricors on the way. I mean, there's just more production available, more resources available. So I think neblime's got him. I think Shambler's going to lose on Boskevine. What a crazy situation. He has 1 Bactylis mutator. Okay, he's going to go ahead and grab 5 more. But again, I don't know if he has got enough of anything else. Bactylisks against each other are not the best. Like, they obviously have 3 armor, right? So I don't know that it's going to be quite enough. And the Gorgor Swamp is now under duress, so if he's not careful, he's going to lose his ability to even make more of them. Iziricors get pulled off the line for that. They're going to go ahead and charge forward. Hydra's wisely picking off some of those. But it's fairly even. I do think Shambler does have the home field advantage here. There's only Iziricors coming up on the other side. So that's significant. That is pretty significant, actually. And so, yeah, okay. It looks like Shambler is going to hold on for dear life versus what neblime has for him. But he's never saturated his third, and I don't think he's going to have the wherewithal to put up some tier 2 defenses. And actually, these Iziricors are now coming around to the third, so if there was any hope of him being able to actually hold that and turn that into something, it's kind of quickly being dashed. He's just now transferred a bunch of workers over there, and there's Iziricors that could really just jump straight onto that, but thankfully for him, neblime only now notices. Okay, the pain is about to hit. Let's watch the worker count. He's now up by 20 workers. Okay, that's pretty much all the damage that he's going to get done there, but still. 20 workers and a base in terms of mining, like, this is pretty significant. Obviously, a 4th base happening over here. Phew. Okay, it's pretty rough, but technically Shambler's holding on. It's just that the tech is not in his favor. I mean, maybe the tech doesn't matter, but you know, he's going for the Quasrock. I'm sure that's going to turn into a Leveril at some point. some units are, strangely enough, just rallied into that for some reason. Some gifted units. But does that really matter? I'm not so sure it does. Now, neblime is going for Vorvs, so that's kind of interesting, because he wants to just be able to stick right on top of the Bactals, slow them down, and surround them. And I do feel like that's a pretty good move. In that case, obviously, you don't need to upgrade the Quasarok, right? Because you get the Vorv from Tier 1. By the way, for those who are not aware, the Alcagelisk recently got that treatment too. When you have Gizithalors, you can turn them into Alcagelisk. You don't need to make the Alkash Chasm anymore. So we removed that for now as well. I have to update the AI code, I think, because it might still request that, but not really that important. So there is some gas capping happening over here, but of course, Neblime's already done that in his main and his third. There's a very large force coming in over here. It really pretty much doesn't matter where he targets. Shambler does not have sufficient units by comparison. So here come some of the Vorvs and the Izira cores trying to charge on in. What would go super well with this is Zoryustalets, by the way, because when they drop below half HP, allies get increased movement speed moving towards them. That's something that some people don't know about Zoryus. But either way, it's not looking too hot for this group. Now, there was enough time to rotate the rest of the army over here, but this is all Shambler has for military. Everything else is in an egg or non-existent. He is benefiting from the range advantage. Here comes some remorphed Vorvs. I don't think it's going to be... Oh, tactical... Tactioca Ag. With a crying face there. It's pretty appropriate. But actually, there's not really any opportunity for the front line to get in here. So, finally, the circuit falls. And I think there's enough Bactalisks here to still force Shambler back. But again, yeah, he just doesn't have that many units being mutated, right? There is a single circuit in the back line here, but it's being ensnared by Vorvs. So its attack rate is going to be reduced. Now it's finally going to be free, but here come the workers. Now down by over 25 workers. Shambler is not looking too hot at this stage. 4 bases to 2. Capping all the gas in the world, except for this one for some reason. Hatrosks turning to Kafrolosks. I almost said Gatholosks. That's tier 3. Ignore that. Not yet. Spoiler. Will it even be required? Izira Core's here? Okay, well, they can drive this Bactalisk force back, but he's actually... maybe some of them were more wounded than I thought. He's having second thoughts about that. Still only on Hydrock Tech, so... Now finally getting a Muthrock Spire, but is that going to be enough? I'm not so sure that it is. Well, admittedly, some of these units are... not doing the hottest, right? Bactalisks are still here in force for Shambler. More units in the back being mutated. Only, Zeth Vorv? Really? Well, if they can get in close enough, but there's more units back here, so... Shambler will still hold on. But I realistically think this is just a matter of time, right? Getting absolutely tickled. Well, the Kafrolosks are here for quicker and cheaper Bactalisk production. Of course, they do not regress into Hydras, which has actually been allowing both players to keep some form of parity so far. Neblime keeping his resources down, relatively speaking. Shambler, on the other hand, really desperate to expand again. This other core watching boldly over as another base being taken by Neblime. He's not putting his... he's not forgetting the macro game, that's for sure. Where do these units go? Resaturating the minerals in the main, they're already depleted. Minerals in the natural are also depleted. So, Shambler is in a real rough spot of it. Having a rough go of it here on his home map. Does his key to victory lie within the Muthrock Spire? He's holding on. But I just don't see how Neblime could possibly miss this opportunity. I mean, he's being a little bit cautious, and, you know, he's got Vithrilisks out already because he saw the Muthrock. I think he knows that there's an opportunity for maybe Mutas. He's got Vithrilisks, and he's getting, you know, Spear Tiths. I think he's going to be okay, actually. I think it's going to be okay for him. Yeah, I don't see a path out for Shambler. He would need to really grind this out somehow. The one thing you can say about the Vithrils is that if Mutalisks don't show up, or basically if Shambler keeps to his side of the map, there's not really anything that the Vithrilisks can do, but I just don't know. Like, Shambler needs to do something, right? And he needs to be able to hold on for dear life, and I just don't see how he's going to be able to do that. Now, there's 6 Mutas, or 5. Yeah, 6 Mutas. They're going to path over towards here. They're going to spot all the Vorvs, maybe. No, maybe not. They're just going to spot this base. So a little bit of scouting happening. Viths are maybe going to get the call up. We'll see. Maybe he's just going to leave that base for now. Kind of confirms what he was already thinking. So he's going to keep the Viths in his main. And honestly, if the mutas go in, do nothing, and die because Shambler gets distracted or something, that might just force the GG right then and there. Because obviously we know Shambler is a... He can be a tilter. Oh no, he didn't finish off the Hatchross. There we go. He's going to go ahead and do that. Now, will he go to the main? This is a really important decision. No, he's going to go ahead and fall away. Okay. But he does spot a lot of Bactyls. Now, these ones will not regress because they were made by Kaffirlosks, right? The Larvosks are going to be used for mutas and of his own. Oh, he's getting all sorts of tech now. Okay. Mutas of his own. Matroleths. Okay. Lots of damage happening over here. Here come the Bactyls. Remember that those won't regress, but it might not matter because there's just so many of them. That's the advantage you get. You can get more of them, but they're lower quality in theory. Looks like he's going to go ahead and take this base again. Use the residual Kagra that is not yet withdrawn from the map. And look at this. This is dirty. Dirty, I say. Denying the man his gas. What does he do to do without gas? Protathalors. Not really. Maybe Kagralists. Maybe Kagralists. Maybe a Vigorlist. You can see there's Vithralists here. There's no way for the mutas to engage with safely. They're starting to get chewed up before they can even really reach it much. Here comes some Matroleths. He's throwing a whole lot of them. Every second they make Rillarokors, so you can see what's happening here. There's like 5 or 6 Rillarokors per second, depending on all the corpses. So that's just overwhelming by itself. And plus, when the Matroleth is nearby, all the Rillarokors will apply Ensnare too. So it's really quite deadly if you're not careful. He's had to withdraw and concede the third base. Good grief. He does have some Protathalors, and the Bactylists are doing pretty nicely to keep the Rillarokors at bay. He just keeps on casting it, though. These last for about 10 seconds, I think it is. And that's just buying time for the rest of his units to come in here. Vithralists are starting to debuff the whole army because the mutas are on top of the ground units. Only one of them remains. Eventually, surely they will fall. Maybe not. Yeah, so many of them are reduced in terms of their armor, reduced in terms of their attack rate by multiple fronts, actually. And the Tetzorikor can't even make it in because of all of the ensnare. The front has been broken. The Matroleths are continuing to spawn oceans of Rillarokors. This is back when Rillarokors could spawn themselves. Basically what Shambler is trying to type there, but not working. And yeah, that's already been fixed. That's pretty good. You can see the problem that I was talking about with Istratholeths in the last cast over. When I was talking about how like the point and click thing is really awkward, right? Because it's just like, oh, let me cast this on cooldown and get a big benefit from it. But I don't think that would have really made a huge difference here. It's kind of amusing to see almost 100 Rillarokors. I think that you probably don't need to test that, man. There's 114 of them. I queed. Absolutely butchered. That's not what I meant. Oh no, IU. Alright, we'll just go ahead and fast forward this. We already know what's happening here. Alright, there you go. So that is the game. The Shambler ends up falling to non-stop Rillarokors, but really he was like 4 to 5 bases. Well, he was 2 bases to 4 to 5. I'm not sure how Shambler could have come back from that without Neblime really sort of like throwing the advantages that he had accrued. You can see like just how dominating it was from a statistical standpoint. Obviously, a lot of these are going to be Rillarokors, by the way. And then obviously on the resources side, he had way more resources. So that just sort of underscores it. There was tier 3 coming probably. I didn't bother looking. But hey, that's pretty interesting. You know, impressive for neblime to take Boskevine away from the Shambler. Crazy stuff. Maybe next time we have Ascension, next time we've got a big tournament running or something, neblime could be a lock for the Grand Finals. You never know. So until then, you'll just have to find out when we eventually get there. But we're not there yet. So stay tuned for more castovers, and I'll see you next time.